we've talked about the Oak Ridge Boys and Roy Clark, but a couple of the names came singing out at me when I looked at them. Rick Nelson?
Well, Rick Nelson was one of those unique performers that came from a television background and a straight rock and roll. He could have been Elvis Presley, and really was, in a lot of cases, as popular as Elvis. But he liked to do everything. I mean, he liked to sing every type of song.
I recall that the song Garden Party
Right.
was his way of saying, you know, they didn't like me then, but look at me now.
Right.
Must have been an incredible feeling for you to watch that particular piece soar to the top.
It was, and to work with him, because he was a very special person.
Anybody in your mind that may have passed at this point that you really look back and think, you know what, if that person were still here, if they were still with us, we could take them to incredible heights?
Well, I have to mention that I've been very fortunate in my life of having a number of mentors in my life. Mm-hmm. Hank Thompson was probably my most important mentor, and I started with Hank in 1950. You know, that's sometimes 60 years. Yeah, 60 years ago. A lot like with Leon when I started promoting his dates. And then eventually in 1951, Hank said, listen, why don't you handle all my dates, become my manager and my agent. Mm-hmm. So that started a relationship that lasted up until Hank's death a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago. But intellectually, he was one of the smartest men that I've ever known, and I learned a lot from him. So I don't know whether he would have been bigger. He sold 60 million records. He was an icon. He's in the Country Music Hall of Fame. But he was very important to me. Another one that I started in that early was a big band jazz band leader, Woody Herman. And he and I kind of had a rocky start to begin with. And eventually, we became such good friends. And I met with him at one time. This is after he was playing, and I had the big agency and all these big stars. And I said, Woody, why don't you let us book your band? He said, but you're in the country music business. I said, no, we're in the sales business. And so we did. We booked Woody for a long time and the great band. So he was a mentor of mine. And I can't, and not necessarily as a mentor, but as a great advisor and spiritual help and all things, is my wife, Manisa Crumbo.
I was going to bring her up about this. You think she might consider sitting with us sometime on this show?
Well, I'm sure she would, yeah. She'd be a lot better guest than I am.
I'd love to have had you both in an hour to do it in.
But her dad, Woody Crumbo, and I learned a lot from Woody. And Woody's great art, in fact, one of the posters that we had at the Tulsa International Music Festival was the Eagle Dancer. Mm-hmm. But from Manisa's artwork, in the Roy Clark show that we did in the Soviet Union, they became interested in her work, and they invited her. It was the only Native American Indian artist that the Ministry of Culture had ever issued an invitation to. And so she exhibited there for 9 months, and she was on the cover of Soviet Life, and she took 35 pieces, and I'm sure she'd love to come and tell you about the experiences that
I'd love to have her if I can get permission. But I'd love to get her on the show if she feels up to it sometime.
Sure, I'm sure she would be.
And this time you could stand against the wall and.
Right. Well, you know, you talk about mentors, and mentors can be your wife too. You know, and she's my mentor as well as being my best friend and wife, and all that combination put together.
James Brown.
Hardest working man in show business. And he said a very interesting thing to me one time when we first started working together. We booked him, we had a record company together, and he was very smart and very focused. And he called me aside. When we first started working, we were doing press conferences and all that. Mm-hmm. And he said, you know, if we have a press conference, I'll never call you Jim. He said, it'll be Mr. Halsey. He said, I would appreciate it if you would call me Mr. Brown instead of James in front of a press conference. He said, it shows we have respect for each other. and not so familiar as to, and I always thought, he's right. And even today, when we talk about him, I say, Mr. James Brown. He was unique. I learned from all of these people that I was involved with. I learned a lot from him. He was very smart.
Is that in the book?
Yes.
The lessons you've learned? Because I got to tell you something. I'm sitting here thinking somebody should pick your brain. Absolutely go through there with a fine-tooth comb and just comb out all the lessons you've learned over the years.
Well, that story about Mr. Brown is in there.
That's great.
I told it because I think having respect for people is one of the most important things that we can all learn. And not that I didn't have before that, but it really taught me, you're in front of a bunch of reporters and television people, and if you're too familiar, maybe they think you really don't have the respect for that person you should have. I mean, that's Mr. James Brown you're talking to. I never forgot that.
I told you this before we started taping today when I talked to my wife, and I said, this is who I'm going to be talking with today. And she said, so how are you feeling about it? I said, my knees are shaking and I'm not even there. I said, I'm going to be around entertainment, and talent royalty in a way that other people have never had the opportunity to do. And you'll never know how grateful I am for that.
Now you're embarrassing me.
No.
Sam, it's great having you on the show today. I hope you can come back.
Here we go. One more thing, and I think we got about 1 minute. 30 seconds. Looking back, if you had the chance to change anything, what would it be?
Well, I think just staying dedicated to what I do and what I do. You'd always change something every day. I would change whatever I did yesterday. So I'm not really looking back. I'm looking to the forward.
And you're still involved in it.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Yeah. But you're also involved in education.
I love to teach. I have an online teaching program that's going up on a community college in Independence, Kansas, Independence Community College. And they're teaching about the book. I teach and I lecture all over. I love to do that. And I was in New York last week doing a lot of media about the book and talking about the business.
I'm sorry to do this. We're out of time. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was so good of you to take time. That's all the time we have for this segment of Green Country Perspectives. And if you have questions, comments, or program ideas, send them to us, and we'll take a serious look. We'll see you again next week on Green Country Perspectives.